Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Lutz. I've spoken or emailed with many of you. I'm the Biofuels Coordinator for the APS program at Department of Energy Resources. We're going to run this webinar fairly quickly, I hope, through the beginning. It's going to be an overview of what the APS is and where biofuels fits in it, and then we'll get into some of the details on the reporting requirements. There are some updates to what we're trying to accomplish with the reports, which will require a little bit more attention to detail to people who are filing them. To let you know, both this is being recorded and will be posted on our website, and in addition, the PowerPoint will also be posted on our website. So the first thing we're going to do is give a quick overview, background on the APS and where biofuels fits in that. The APS was established 2009 in the Green Communities Act, which was a major energy bill that passed in the first or second year of the, or actually third year of the second year of the Deval-Patrick administration. It created the APS, which initially two technologies were highlighted: combined heat and power and flywheel storage. There were also a short list of other technologies, all of which have been removed. Most of those were removed in this bill from 2014. In addition, at the time, they added air and ground source heat pumps, solar thermal, biomass, biogas, and biofuels. Then there was another amendment to the APS in 2016, where they added waste to energy thermal and fuel cells. Within the APS, eligible technologies are able to generate one alternative energy certificate for each megawatt of electricity, or 3,412 BTUs of useful thermal energy produced. We got the the biofuels portion of this off the ground. The regulations were published in 2017, I believe, and then we had a 3-year retroactive reporting that occurred, and then we would settle into a regular reporting regime. The cap is one of the things that's featured in the regulations. It is specific to biofuels. Biofuels are not allowed to exceed more than 20% of the total projected annual compliance obligation for the compliance year. We made a further change to that, where that no more than 10% could be generated in the first half of the year. That was in an attempt to make sure people weren't sort of oversubscribing early and then backing off, trying to spread it out throughout the year. Further to that, if 100% of the attributes available prior to 2001 are not used, the rest are then allocated or sent into the second half of the year. If the number of attributes reported by generation units exceeds the available attributes, the number of available attributes shall be allocated on a prorated basis. And we've seen that for the last 2 reporting cycles, and I'll show you a little bit more detail on that. This is the summary chart for 2018, which was the first full year of regular reporting we had. There were 421,779 attributes available. Divide that in half, you get 210,000. For the first half of 2018, only 110,353 were minted. The remainder of the 2010 were then rolled into the third quarter. So you can see the difference. There were many more available in the third quarter, but only 182,000 of those were generated through the reporting process. So in both of those quarters, or both of those reporting segments, 100% of the attributes were available. If you take a look at 2019, it's a different story. The obligation went up about 14,000 available AICs. In the first reporting period, 100% of those were used. In the second period, again, 100% or more than 100. I should say more than 100% in both quarters were generated. So we had to prorate the AICs that were generated in each reporting period. In the first reporting period, they were prorated at 75%. In the second reporting period, they were prorated at 82%. So we'll get in. I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. How? There we go. To get to these numbers, we collect data from essentially all entities that are involved in the supply chain for the distribution of eligible liquid biofuels. The distributors earn their AICs based on their sales of eligible liquid biofuels to end users. End users are their customers, essentially the owners of small oil-fired heating systems. Large systems, they generate AICs through essentially the standard way that other technologies do. They have to file a specific application for each specific site. We settled on the approach for small ones due to the fact that we couldn't see a way to get through having to register every single small boiler and system in the Commonwealth through a regular standard system. The distributors reporting forms uses a formula of about 33 gallons of biofuels generates 1 AIC, and that assumes a boiler or furnace efficiency of 80%. And then that if there's a proration, that number is then prorated. We validate the data and we give it to the Clean Energy Center, who then reports that information to NEPOOL, who are the ones who do the minting of the AICs. And that's the end of that process. This essentially is why we feel we need to track each gallon of eligible liquid biofuel as it moves through the entire supply chain. The first reporting period in 2018, April 2018, actually covered the 3-year retroactive portion of the program from 2015 to 2017. In that reporting period, we had 4 suppliers, 3 wholesalers, and 8 distributors that filed reports. 10,634 gallons were sold. Oh, geez, I didn't put the AICS number in there. That's a mistake. I'll find it and let you guys know. This will be corrected on the website. And then they had to be slightly prorated that year. I think they were prorated at about a 98% level. The most recent filing, just last April, covered the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2019. We had 8 suppliers. Wait a minute, these numbers are wrong. Damn it, I'm sorry. 8 suppliers. I believe that's supposed to be 12 wholesalers and 51 distributors. 8,602,000 gallons were sold. They generated 256,163 AICs, which were prorated down to 2017 147 AICs. We've created an internal summary document that I'm going to show you, which uses Excel. The data from all the submitted reports that we receive are manually merged into this document for a complete program summary. The summary report uses several formulas that calculate total production, purchases, and sales. We then analyze the data for each reporting entity, comparing each distributor to their supplier and/or wholesaler, as well as reviewing their final sales. This is done to make sure that, and I've said this on a number of occasions, that the gallons that are generated at the beginning of the process by the suppliers exceed in each step the gallons that are sold to either wholesalers or distributors. We want to make sure that people aren't taking credit for gallons that didn't exist. I'm going to show you, I'm going to have to pop out of this real quickly and show you what that reporting document looks like, our summary document. Hold on a sec. So this is what the summary document looks like. Each separate entity has a tab. I've made some names up here for the sake of protecting the innocent. We cut and paste the data from each report into this. You'll see that it looks familiar. It is essentially the information that we get submitted to us. Wholesalers, same thing. This one here, one of the things we use, and you'll see it in another spot, this occurs on a infrequent but fairly regular basis, that bills of lading ID numbers are sometimes duplicated. It's either they transpose numbers or they double count, deliveries are double counted. We pick up on that, and I've gotten back to some of you to try to clarify what that might be. Wholesaler sales data, same thing. We enter the summary tables of the sales data to get total numbers of sales. Distributors, same thing. I didn't complete this fully, but we drop in purchase data. Again, it looks familiar for those who have filed these documents before. And then, sales data, same thing. This then is all pulled through to our summary document. This one I did not go through and fill out. It is essentially a blank version of the document we dealt with in the last reporting period. You'll see the distributors are listed. We have 2 separate charts for the distributors. One actually measures that the sales that occur are occurring at the minimum 10% level that we require in our regulations. And if it doesn't, I get a notice that it hasn't happened, and I have to go back and drill down into the data to figure out what happened there. I've worked with a number of you to clarify issues of the minimum 10%. We then obviously summarize the sales, purchase and sales data. The column, this column here is their purchase data. This column here is their sales data. This has to show positive. If it doesn't show positive, it goes red. The same kind of thing occurs with the wholesalers. Carryover, there's a carryover column there. Carryover, positive, or sale, purchases, then sales. It then summarizes. Then again, we've got the supplier one, which doesn't obviously have a purchase thing, but it has the quantity of the feedstock that they've purchased. Then their total production. We make a calculation to determine that the feedstock quantities exceed the number of gallons that they produce. And then we have this long and very complicated document, which basically compares each entity's purchases and sales and then sums them so that we can see that a wholesaler or a supplier did not sell more than people, or that did not sell less than what was reported by their customers as being purchased. It carries through the end, and these numbers show the produced gallons and the sales gallons. I don't know why these, oh, I know why, because I put in some fake reporting. We need to, again, we need the numbers of gallons produced at the front end to be greater than the number of gallons purchased and sold at the back end. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to show you real quickly. These documents look familiar. I'm going to refer to these back when I get back to the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to click through them real quick so I don't necessarily have to jump back in here. You've seen these before: wholesalers, purchase and sales, and then distributors, purchase and sales looks very similar to wholesalers, purchase and sales, except it has the further table for the estimated AICS calculation, which is again the formula that goes into producing this, is essentially the discussion that I had in an earlier slide about 33 gallons sold and then obviously hopefully combusted in a furnace will produce an AIC. Back to the PowerPoint from current slide. Sorry. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. The reporting requirements. There is a web page at the DOER site that this address leads you to. It has a lot of information on what's required for reporting. If you don't check it on a regular basis, you should. That will most likely be the page that this presentation is presented on, for instance. I've been including that in either the letter or the email that I send out to all new applicants. And I've encouraged people to check this on a regular basis. Filing the reports, they must be filed at the DOER thermal mailbox. We had an issue a couple reporting periods where people were sending me stuff directly. There's a couple issues with that, is that we need to log them into the APS program before I start reviewing them. And legitimately, I may not always be doing this job, so sending it directly to me may create a problem of stuff not getting reviewed. So make sure you're sending it to the DOER, the thermal DOER box. I'd like each subject line to have this information in it, the name of the entity and the quarters that the report is covering. Again, it's to make sure that things are being dropped into the appropriate files and logged properly. If it doesn't have a subject, or if there's other information in the subject line, it could get sent to the wrong person or the wrong mailbox, wrong file. So make sure you report this way. Then lastly, I clicked through the reporting documents earlier. Each page that contains data has this box at the top of it. Obviously, it says supplier or distributor if you're one of those. I'd like this to be filled out on each page. I get many reports that don't have this filled out on each page. And to let you know, I sometimes have 4 or 5 separate reports open, and it makes it a lot easier for me to realize what page I'm on. If this is up there, this is going to be more strictly enforced as to be part of a complete filing. Secondly, the naming conventions. I showed you the documents that we use to summarize the data. One of the major issues I've had in reviewing these reports and then trying to compile them is that entities that are reporting are using different names for the entities that they purchased their product from. That basically has required me to go in and determine what entity they're actually referring to, and then B, make those changes. As anyone who's ever managed significant data files in Excel, there is great opportunity to make mistakes in terms of that. I will be sending reports back if you do not use the name of the entity you purchase your fuel from as it appears on either the biofuels suppliers list that's posted on our website or the qualified units list. Those are the names that should be appearing in all your reports. I will send them back and ask you to make changes if it does not occur. We have gotten to the end of some reporting periods and realized that there was a naming mistake rather than any other data mistake, reporting mistake, or incorrectly reported quantities, and we have to track that down. I'm hoping I don't have to do that again, and if everyone complies with this requirement, we'll be ahead of the curve on that. Other reporting requirements, I'd like data reported only to 2 decimal points. You have to use the same protocol throughout your report. So in other words, if it's no decimal points as a purchase and then sales starts showing up with data points, it will result in data comparison problems. You'll have a couple more gallons or a couple less gallons being purchased or sold. Again, it's something we have to drill down on. If a bill of lading includes figures with decimals, i.e. you purchase, 323,242.674 gallons, that needs to be brought back down to the 0.67. So you'll have to look at your data you get on your bills of lading and fix that. One of the issues that is going to be corrected in this quarter is that suppliers have been able to report their feedstock purchases in tons. We are going to request that you make the conversion to gallons. We have been doing that. We will communicate directly with suppliers on how we would like them to do that. Again, it's to ensure that a supplier is comfortable with what we're doing with their data. I don't think we've had a problem yet, but it adds a level of complexity to our review of the documents, and we'd like to put that back into the supplier's requirements. Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and then we're going to go to questions after this. Samantha?
Great, thanks, Dave. So we just wanted to touch base on the 2020 APS review, which I know has been a topic that a lot of the biofuels industry has been interested in. So we are required to complete a review of the APS program no later than December 31st of 2020 per our APS regulation. The APS regulation requires that we look at 3 main areas: an examination of the costs and benefits of the program, an examination of the effectiveness of the program, and then also looking at the minimum standard and its rate of increase. We began preparing for this review around this time last year. We contracted with Daymark Energy to conduct a study of the APS. That study is largely complete, and we're working on the final stages of it. It will be made public hopefully within the next couple weeks or months. And then we will also be engaging stakeholders for additional information to pair with that study in order to complete the review. So we are hoping that we'll be able to engage stakeholders relatively soon. And then we will be engaging them probably throughout the summer and then early fall, hoping to wrap up the review around late fall, early winter prior to the end of the year. And that review, while it will be targeting these three main areas, also, eligibility criteria and other areas of the program will also be up for discussion. So if you would like to participate in this review, just ensure that you sign up for the DOER's email list. We'll be sending all information regarding the review directly to that communication list, and as well as the list that this webinar was sent to as well. So I think, Dave, now we are going to move over to do questions. So I think the best way to do this would be, if you have a question, to please use the raise your hand function, and then I can unmute you based on your hand raise, and you can go ahead and ask your question. So if anyone has a question and like to raise your hand, please do so now.
And I can go back to the slide if there's a need to go back to a slide.
Okay, I am seeing that there were some questions that came into the question box, and so I'm just going to run through those while we wait and see if there's any, if anyone raises their hand. So someone asked in the question box if this data was public. I believe we do have the ability to protect some of this data through public information requests, but as far as go ahead, Dave. Did you want to supplement that?
It contains, all of these reports contain confidential business information, either business relationships that people have with their suppliers or their customers. And it's been determined that it is confidential business information, and therefore we will not release it publicly. And if it's public request that is made, we have the ability to black it out. Black portions of it out. We have in the past given people gross quantity data, but we will not be doing that for particular filers. Again, that's considered confidential business information.
Thanks, Dave. And then one other question was in terms of the APS review. Do you expect the changes to be implemented for the 2021 compliance period, or could it be delayed to 2022? So the review actually does not require that we do a rulemaking to address any features of the program. It just requires us to review the program. So it's very feasible that we could do a rulemaking that would result in changes. That would be that's a very plausible outcome of the review, but we just can't say for certain if that is the case. Based on our current timeline, with the review wrapping up close to the end of 2020, my guess is that if we were to proceed with a rulemaking to update the program, that would be occurring in 2021, and so therefore any changes wouldn't be occurring or implemented until 2022. Again, that's just based on where we are right now. We're not able to provide any more information other than that, but we will be trying to keep stakeholders updated as quickly as possible. And then there was a question, will you release the distributors list? I'm assuming this is referring to the list of distributors that are eligible under the program. That information is public. That's actually already published on our website under the APS qualified units list. If anyone would like to see that list where it lives, you can email Dave or I, and we can provide you a link to that. Okay, and then it looks like we have one person with their hand raised, Ahmed Amin. I am going to unmute you so that you can ask your question. Okay, Ahmed, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Karen. This is Ahmed Amin from Global Companies, LLC. My question was, in the webinar, you mentioned that, we have to report to 2 decimal points, all the data. Is that like a necessity, or is that a recommendation?
It's a necessity. If you don't have 2 decimal points, you obviously don't have to report it. If everything's measured in whole numbers, don't worry about it. But I'm trying to I'm trying to standardize the way people report, so it doesn't lead to complications. One of the things I mentioned in my presentation, and it applies not only to an internal reporting document, but to documents related to from a provider to a customer. If the decimal points are different, it means that the totals at the end of the compiling the data are different too. If they're all standard, then hopefully the numbers will add up more directly. We always end up at the end of the compilation of data with a couple figures that are 2 to 3 to 4 gallons apart. It doesn't always make a big difference, but for instance, if a customer, if a distributor is very close to the 10% thing, it could in fact drive them below the 10% mark, for instance. And if it's a significant amount of biofuels that are being reported, you could end up with 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, several, tens of gallons difference if you're reporting millions of gallons of purchases and sales. And when it gets into that point, that's when I actually have to start tracking stuff down with individual filers. They have to talk to their customers or to the people they purchase their fuel from to get standardized information. So I would prefer that everyone go to 2 decimal points. I would require that to answer your question directly, I will require that you go to 2 decimal points if that data is there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, we haven't gone into that, but I just wanted to clear up and make sure that if that's the case, then definitely Global will be reporting it to 2 decimal points. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ahmed. And then we had one more question come in through the question box, which is there a place to see AIC prices? DOER does not formally track or report out on AIC prices. The best resource if you are looking for a current up-to-date price for AICs would be to reach out to your aggregator or an aggregator that's operating in the APS market. Okay, and I'm not seeing any more questions come in and no other hands are raised. So if anyone has any last minute questions and you'd like to raise your hand or enter it into the questions box, we can hold off for one more second. But otherwise, I think that brings us to the end of our presentation. Dave, did you have any final words?
I just say if you have questions, as I said, this will be posted on our website. I'll send out an email telling you where it is. And maybe as part of that email, I'll also send a link out to the qualified units list to address the question that was asked earlier. If after reviewing it a second time, you have questions, please feel free to follow up with me. The reporting period, reports for the first and second quarter are due in 5.5 weeks. So hopefully you've got some time to absorb this and make the appropriate changes. We were going to do it earlier, but we were afraid that it would be forgotten by the time we got to July. So we waited until right before the compilation of data process starts with both reporters and with us. So if you have any questions after we get done here, feel free to ask me. I think my invitation contained my email address, and as I said, I will be sending out an email with the links to the presentation and the audio video version of it as well.
Great. Well, no more questions have come in. Oh, there might be one more. Hold on one second. Let me just double check that. There was one more. Someone asked, has adding biodiesel into the APS program changed the price of electricity to consumers? The APS program is a ratepayer funded program in that the cost of the program is passed from the retail electricity suppliers who are required to have an obligation on to their customers. There's no way for us to isolate within the APS program whether or not one particular technology has resulted in the changing of the price of electricity to customers. I will say that back in 2015, the APS was very undersupplied, meaning that there was a large amount of alternative compliance payments that were being made. That is the most expensive way to comply with the program. So the addition of supply to the program does reduce program costs, as does the decrease in certificate prices. And so in a very, very general sense, you could say that since 2015, where we were undersupplied, to today, where we are now experiencing some lower egg prices than we've seen in the past, the program itself has reduced in cost. But again, we can't say exactly if that was contributed or due to any one particular technology. And we're also, we don't necessarily know exactly how these retail electricity suppliers pass those costs on to their customers. So I hope that was a helpful explanation, but we can't necessarily answer that question as phrased. Okay, well, thank you all so much. I hope that this has been informative. And like Dave mentioned, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope everyone has a nice weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.